Hi everyone. I've decided to do a couple more recordings on, what a good critique looks like, looking at a range of different styles of writing and articles so that you can have a look at that. Today's writing is a critique on an article called Tough Love or Bullying, New Nurse Transitional Experiences, and you can go and have a look at that yourself out of the library. It's from the Journal of Clinical Nursing and it's a 2016 article. Okay, so go and have a look at that. All right, so I want to talk about what is really good about this assignment and to give you some ideas about what you're going to do. So first of all, this person has started with a very nice introduction. You can see this here. Talks about what evidence-based practice is. So what the student is doing is she is linking the task and an outcome there, so that's very nice. She's just talking about evidence-based practice. She then goes on to talk about this essay will critique the journal article, blah 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 blah. Very nice. She's just very clear about what the intention of the paper is to do, and it guides the reader to, it just tells the reader that you as the writer have a really good handle on what you're doing. She then goes on and talks about what the key components is she's going to be critiquing. And she then says, there's a good, and she ends it up with another statement about why evidence, using research as part of the evidence-based practice cycle, if you like, is important. So she goes right in. She's talking about title, author qualifications, and whether the article is peer reviewed. So she goes into the title, and she's talking about, and this is very nice here, short yet clear, but is not descriptive enough. And that is right, because if you look at that, you don't know what country it's in. You don't know much more about the article than what is there. And so this student has picked up on a number of these things through her writing, and you can have a look there. Doesn't give an indication of study setting, so you don't know what country. Assumptions that so it's a nice critique there. So that here, where she's actually making that critique is she's telling you what should be there. So here it is, good title, should be blah blah blah. She's telling you what is in there, and then she's critiquing it. So she's saying it does not, however, give an indication of study setting, thus allowing the readers to make an assumption that transitional nurses are experiencing these negative behaviours everywhere. And that is right. So that's a good critique to be making. She goes on to talk about the article's peer reviewed and has 2 authors listed. She then goes in and talks about the qualifications of both authors, and it's a good discussion that this student has made here. She's talking about appropriate knowledge in the area, and I think that is, she's made a very nice critique here. This student has done very well, by the way, so in case you're wondering. All right, so then she goes on to the abstract, and you see all the way through for where the student is telling you what should be in that component of the research article. She is providing a reference. So we see here Wright, Sinclair, Reed, Shaw, and Ramsbotham being provided there. We've seen other people, Bernard and Newell, we saw earlier, and they're listed again further on. So she's coming back to the literature to say what should be there, and then she's telling us what is there. Okay, so she says that the abstract should be, broken down summary, usually not more than 300 words. She goes on to say the abstract presented in the article is systematically structured, and the reader is able to identify that the paper is qualitative while being introduced to the purpose of the research. So that's nice. So she's writing that well, and then she goes on and talks about the aims need to be broad statements to describe what the author hopes to achieve whilst the objectives revolve around the plan on how to achieve it. Then she goes on to tell us this. So, and then she's talking about, the aim of the article there. It is interesting. She then goes on. So this next sentence, it is apparent, starts the critique for her in this section. So she's told us what should be in the abstract. She's told us what is in the abstract, and now she's critiquing where she sees there could be improvement, or where there is, maybe a comment to be made there. So she says it's apparent from the information presented in this section that the involvement of preceptors in the study has not been included within the article title, as the reader is under the impression the article will only focus on the transitional nurse experiences. And that's a really nice critique. What she has done there is she's nailed it, because she's saying, well, hang on a minute, the title says it's all about new graduate nurses effectively. However, when you get into it, you see that preceptors are also talked to in the study. So she then goes on and says this suggests that there is no congruence between title, aim, and objectives of the study, and will therefore influence the reader as to whether or not the reader continues with the article. And so she's got two sentences that just really nail that critique. We move on to the introduction. Okay, so she's talking about what should be in the introduction. Very nice. She's then again telling us what it is in the introduction, and then she talks about the background. Okay. Okay, so here she's doing a nice critique down here, because she's talking about why they've used an old reference to define the word transition. But then she goes on and talks about how they provide the word bullying, but there's somewhere I read it just before. They didn't go on to this is it here. So some incongruences and inconsistency with the aim and purpose, thus confusing the reader and providing no clear direction of what is being studied. So that's very nice. So she's really, and I've skipped through that section a little bit quickly because I want to get onto the methodology in the 15-minute recording. So methodology, very important part. This is where we understand if your research question is congruent with the method that you've chosen, because if they're incongruent, you will not be able to, the study won't work. So she's gone on to talk about that it's constructivist grounded theory. Lovely. So limitations can be identified in this section in conjunction with the aim. Central research, so she's critiquing all the way through. Okay, so it's talking about design here, the population being investigated and the choice of method being identified. Lovely. According to Wright St. Clair, the sample needs to be specific with who and how many participants. So she talks about that. Then she talks about what is in there. So voluntary recruitment, blah blah blah. Then she says, and then the word purposive sampling is used in this sentence here. Okay, now of course the people that are marking your paper understand what purposive sampling is, but you need to demonstrate that you understand it. So she goes on in the next sentence to demonstrate this, where she says purposive sampling can be defined as something is beautiful. It's demonstrating that she understands it. Okay, so that is really important when you critique an article, that you're demonstrating to the reader that you actually understand this article and can see the pros and cons in it. Because while you're doing that pros and cons, you're actually weighing up whether this can be used in your context. Okay, so that's why critiquing is really important. Okay, so she goes on here and says the sample and choice of method is appropriate for the constructivist grounded theory as it enables the authors to obtain valuable information from the participants. So while we've seen previously in her paper that some of the critique is about what's missing, that sentence demonstrates that she understands and is as letting the reader know that while there's some inconsistencies early on with the title, aims and objectives, when it gets down to the methodology is reasonable to use for this particular type of study, and she's saying that. Okay, so remember, a critique is not just about being critical, it's about looking at whether, so you're looking at whether the study's robust. Okay, so she goes on, talks about ethics and tells us what should be there. That's all there. And then, tells us what is there. And then here she starts a critique. Although it is mentioned that the pseudonyms will be used to de-identify participants, this section does not make any comment about consent or confidentiality, nor does it specify how the data is stored. Lovely. Okay, they're the sort of things we're expecting to see, alrighty? So again, this student has nailed the section where she said what's there, and that's great, but here's what's missing. Okay, so she's really thinking about what was in my text that says that has to be there for ethics, what was actually there, and what's the difference? Or is there no difference and this is actually fine? Okay, so data analysis and collection. So again, talking about what's there, what should be there. So again, talking about what is there. And then she goes on to say, and here's her critique here: the use of one author in the data collection process ensures consistency, while the allowance of the participants, or I'd say the allowing of the participants to confirm their interpretation of their transcript with this author ensures validity and credibility to help support the purpose of the study. That's a beautiful critique. What that says is that she has read enough about grounded theory to understand the method. That tells the reader that this student has got a really, really sound handle on what's going on there. Okay, so she's critiquing it, but once again, she's not being critical here. She's telling us what is going on and why they've done a good job here. Okay, so she's talking about tables, what should be there, 10 questions. Okay, so now let's go on to findings and discussion. So largest section of the article. Okay, and again, what should be there? Lovely. And then she tells us what is there. Then here's a critique. This section was covered in greater and links to the study of blah 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 blah. So again, she's talking about this is a critique here. Very nice. Okay, now alrighty. Again, so she's talking about what should be in the conclusion. She's telling us from this sentence on what's in the conclusion. And then she, in this next sentence, is telling us the difference. Okay, so what she's saying here is they didn't relate the findings back to the existing literature, and that is a problem. Okay, so and that's exactly right, that she's done the right thing there. Okay, so then she's gone on to relevance of clinical practice, and she's talked about what should be there, what is there, the difference. Okay, and that is the pattern that you do all the way through a critique. Okay, what should be there, what is there, the difference, or whether it's done well. Okay, so she's, again, there it is, there's the sentence of what is there. Then go on to acknowledge there are some limitations. Okay, so she talks about what the authors talk about. Then she says, but does not including stakeholder perspectives, but doesn't provide additional areas of further research. Okay, nice. All right, now look at this. Lovely. Now she's made a recommendation here. not all people would need to do that because they're not clear enough about it. Unsuitable for use in the profession alone, but does provide opportunity for further research. Okay, so you could then go on if you're not very good with conclusions. So this paper has critiqued blah blah blah. Okay, I hope that's helped, and thank you.